on KTRS, live and local.
See, you
he
mock.
sounds hurt.
You mock, but you know.
How does that come out of a man?
Tight pants. That was their secret. Hey, it's the Kilcoyne Show. John Carney, Martin Kilcoyne, John flying solo coming up 1 o'clock. Here on KTRS, we're live from Westport, and happy that Jane Pauley has stayed for another segment. I guess we didn't really ask her. We just said we'll be right back. That's how you do it.
Yeah, you don't ask.
Jane's in town for her book signing and event tomorrow night, St. Louis County Library. That's the one across from Plaza Frontenac, 1640 South Lindbergh. Saturday, January 11th, tomorrow, 7 o'clock, the book, Your Life Calling. And it's sort of the baby boomers starting over.
Did you just say Plaza Frontenac?
Yeah, I think.
Why?
I don't know why.
That was weird.
Tight pants. It was not meant to be.
Simon & Schuster puts the book out, and this is number 3 for you?
Number 2. But I figure for the rest of my life, now that I've written 2 books, for the rest of my life, you ask me, well, what do you do these days, Jane? I can say, I'm thinking about another book.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm
reading one, coloring one, or writing one?
I'm thinking about another book.
No, the first one, the autobiography, you dropped some bombshells. I mean, you told people, you told the world that you were bipolar, that you had struggles.
I was diagnosed at the age of 50. And
why?
No one was more surprised than I was.
But why would you make yourself that vulnerable? You don't have to share that.
Well, what good is it being famous if you can't do something useful with it? So the day I was diagnosed, and I, because I was Midwestern, which, as you know, in the rest of the country is often used synonymously with normal. Normal was where my public image and my self-image, crossed. I was once described by the president of NBC News as having the best mental health in the business, and I was, too humble to it, but I totally agreed. So at the age of 50, it had been it's a complicated story, but I was being treated for hives, and the series of medication for hives triggered an unrecognized vulnerability to a mood disorder. So at the age of 50, I was bipolar. At the age of 48, I hadn't been, but I am now, and I am caring my advocacy. It's a little like Michael J. Fox, who has Parkinson's and describes Parkinson's as the gift that keeps on taking. But after he gets the laugh, he's serious. It enabled him to find a better man inside than he ever knew was there. So, bipolar is a difficult thing, and I haven't had a recurrence in 14 years, but I take very good care of myself to the degree that makes a difference. But having an advocacy role was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. I didn't have a background with mental illness. There wasn't trauma to protect or secrets to protect. I came to it as a journalist. I knew it was a medical disorder, and I also knew there weren't too many people standing up to be the poster child for it, so that when I got well, and I knew I would recover, I thought, well, I could do some good with this. So 10 years ago, when I wrote Skywriting, I wrote about that.
Grew up in Indianapolis, went to college at Indiana University.
I did.
Did you always say, I wouldn't mind being on that Today Show? It looks like fun. I mean, I want to be a TV star. Was that the goal from early on?
I was not raised to be famous. Nobody was more surprised when I got a job in local television in Indianapolis than I think my father was, who suggested that I change my name. He didn't think Jane Pauley had enough zip. He suggested Jan Grandison. It's a kind of a family name, but I kept Jane Pauley. No, we were stunned. I didn't study journalism in college. I had no experience in journalism. So 4 years after college, I'm sitting in Barbara Walters' chair. One of the mysteries of my life. I used to apologize for it. It was just luck. And that's one of the things about being in your 60s. I don't apologize anymore. I had a 40-year career in broadcasting, and, somehow, whatever, I don't know why they put me there, but I guess I earned the right to stay. Right up until I had a daytime show. It wasn't picked up, and then all of a sudden, opportunity stopped knocking at my door. I'll be honest, I kind of expected, Jane's available. I thought the phone would ring, but it didn't. And I realized, to quote one of the stories in my book, Trip Hansen said this, and I totally identified. This time, it's not going to happen if I don't make it happen. And it took a few years, but I had this idea about a series. It wasn't thinking television. My daughter turned on the Today Show one day in a hotel room in Nashville. As I told you, she was doing the singing thing when we were in the break. So we were in Nashville together, and she's the Today Show fan. Willard and Gene Shalit were both on the show that day. And I had this epiphany. My ideas about reinvention, transition, change, could be a segment on the Today Show. I pitched it to the executive producer on his 40th birthday. He loved the idea, didn't want to pay for it. I said, well, what if I found a sponsor? Entrepreneurial Jane was born. I went to AARP, put it together, and now we're beginning our 5th series. It's now called Life Reimagined on Today, and that's where the stories came from originally. They're stories that I've broadcast with on the Today Show.
Delivering the news and anchoring for a long time. You see it with athletes when they get out of the game, they miss it, and they can't watch a game because it's frustrating. They want to get down there and get back into the scrum again. I know that's a euphemism from another sport. But
Good. No, your sports knowledge astounds me.
Yeah, but I knew it was. I know.
do you watch the news now? Can you watch the news now and just take it in as a viewer? Or are you like,
absolutely.
the lighting's wrong?
Oh,
you
no, I
shouldn't
watch
be
the
fuddling
news
with
like
those
everybody
papers?
else does. I throw things at the TV like everybody else does. I am a news consumer. No, the other day, last week, Bryant Gumbel and I co-hosted the Today Show with Matt Lauer. It was his birthday, a holiday, and nobody else was there. Savannah was gone.
So they do still call, Jane. It's just at those times.
Well, they do. So, but it was, I hadn't hosted the Today Show in 30 years, and Matt says, is it just like riding a bike? And I said, it's just like riding a bike when you haven't ridden a bike in 30 years, and now you're riding a bike on an interstate highway.
She was only there for a day, and Matt still tried to get her fired.
But I did love it. No, if we'll do it again sometime.
Talk about Matt for a second. The guy was one of the most beloved people on television for a long time.
I still think he's the best host ever.
But his image to the public isn't quite so shiny anymore.
The media piled on. Yes, that was handled. That situation with Ann was handled with no grace whatsoever. I can think of some other examples in the history of broadcasting where similar situations happened with no grace.
Oh, we got him in this building.
Yeah, it happens all the time. But I do think the media saw an opportunity to pile on. But the show is doing great now, I'm a big fan. I think Matt's the best host there, and that's saying a lot because the show's got tremendous history. And including Bryant Gumbel and Tom Brokaw. They were hosts of Today, but I think Matt's the best.
My wife would leave me for Matt Lauer in a flash, and she's as much as told me so.
Well, and I don't think the list really stops there.
That's why I keep riding Matt, saying, come on over, please.
Then you did Dateline, which I don't know what they thought early on. Hey, we'll try this for a week or two. We got a couple slots, and it just went gangbusters. And there was a time where it was almost every night of the week. And Stone Phillips is St. Louis's own.
Right.
Stone Phillips. And we sat here on the show one day and said, whatever happened to Stone Phillips? And he had been on the show, one of our morning shows. He had grown a beard. We said, who is this guy? Did the Dateline success surprise you?
I don't think anybody wasn't surprised by that. NBC, it was funny. The networks, how the networks newsed. Back in the day, ABC couldn't do an evening news program. CBS couldn't do a morning show. And NBC couldn't do a primetime magazine after 17 tries, I think. And the 16th try was a show called Real Life with Jane Pauley, which was canceled while I was interviewing Candace Bergen. Got the news. But we transitioned, which was, the story of my career. It was sort of a straight line of success if you don't count the bumps along the way, like Real Life being canceled. But it segued into Dateline, which is still on the air 20 years. Now it's 21 years. I saw last week it was one of the top 10 shows. Hello. I did it for 11 years.
Talk about
Stone.
Aaron Sorkin's newsroom for a minute. Do you watch the show at all? The newsroom?
I thought you wanted to talk about Alpha House, my husband's show.
We will in mere moments. But
okay,
I'm
we
curious,
can talk about Aaron Sorkin if you.
But do you watch? Well, do you watch the newsroom?
No, not so much. But Gary does. Gary watches television all the time, Breaking Bad and Boardwalk Empire,
And Gary Trudeau, your
Yeah,
husband, does he
Gary.
doodle at home, or does he just doodle
but
for
he's,
money?
He's now writing. Gary has written a television show that's on Amazon.
Tell me about
Amazon.
it. Tell
I
us.
think
We're
it's
dying
Alpha
to know.
House,
Yeah.
John.
Alpha House.
Yes.
It's a
Gary
memoir.
Trudeau,
How-
famous from Doonesbury fame,
Yeah,
of course.
he's a cartoonist. I married the cartoonist of my dreams. But no, Aaron Sorkin. I was on the Today Show with one of my stories once, and Aaron Sorkin was on with the Social Network movie cast.
Right.
And he took me aside and he said, I'm not quoting him, but he was laughing at the time, but something about, ripping off my husband, that that his writing was inspired
Yeah.
by work that Gary did, which was very flattering because Aaron Sorkin is a genius. But maybe Gary is too. I don't know. But no, Netflix, does the House of Cards.
Right.
Television isn't television anymore. It's everywhere.
Well, I asked about that one because it portrays a newsroom where you spent a lot of
Yeah.
time, and I was just curious of the accuracy
There was no
in your
drama.
mind.
I
or-
mean, the television, it was just no drama. Especially, if there was drama, Jane would you leave the room because I was from Indianapolis and couldn't be, so there was no drama. No, it would be a very, very dull show.
I'm looking at your timeline. When you were doing local news in Indianapolis, would Letterman have been doing weather at that time?
Yes.
So he was down the
Funniest weatherman in history. He'd be in a bucket with a broom, like he's sailing, with a green screen behind him, and hysterical. I don't know if he ever did the weather, but talk about a genius, David is. But he and I went back to Indianapolis. This is probably 25 years ago, and I was, the Miracle. What are you doing on the Today Show? And he now had a late night show and couldn't explain how that had happened to him. And he told these high school kids that it was like robbing 7-Elevens. The money's good, but you're going to get caught. It was, and I knew what he meant and felt the same way. He was, and this was 2 or 3 years, and I checked it on Wikipedia.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2 or
Gotta be
3
accurate.
years before the phrase imposter syndrome was coined. But he just, and I think he still suffers from I think he still feels that
I think
way.
we all do that. All of us that
I'm
get
over
to
it.
do what we love to
over
do
it.
for a living, there's a little voice, certainly in my head too, that says, you're a fraud.
No, I did.
They're
I
gonna
spent
find
20,
out
30
about
years feeling that way.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't
I
go away. I don't
don't
mind
anymore.
it. It's kind of a sexy voice in my head too, so I don't mind it.
My vanity is such that I said, "Oh, we have a guest coming in. Yeah, it's Jane Pauley. Is she bringing food?" That's all I thought. That's how numb I've become.
And
in
I'm
this
wondering, are
business.
these guys serving food? Where's the buffet?
And if it goes too long, Dan Patrick said to me one time on the radio, "Do you have any commercials? Am I done yet?" Jane, great to have you here. Jane Pauley, and folks listening around town, you can go see Jane at the book signing tomorrow night. It is free. It is open to the public at the St. Louis County Library. More of these fabulous stories, 1640 South Lindbergh. John, that's across from Plaza Frontenac.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Saturday, January 11th at 7 o'clock. And it's been great fun telling stories, walking down memory lane. You look terrific.
Thank
And
you.
fun to hear the stories.
Bring on some more Bee Gees.
Josh, can you come? Just like that.
there we
We are a well-oiled machine. The one and only Jane Pauley in St. Louis this week, and it's been our pleasure here on KTRS. The John Carney Show coming your way next on the Big 550.